Commissioner Vestager is very accustomed to the problems in the Irish insurance market, having overseen the investigation into the motor insurance industry over recent years for operating a cartel, and that investigation and political pressure from Sinn Féin and Pearse Doherty led the government to set out the 66 actions on insurance reform. Your government recently published a report claiming most of the actions have been implemented or are in the process of being implemented. However, the Director for the Alliance for Insurance Reform, Peter Boland, said that all of the gains that have been made are being pocketed by insurers, and in fact we are seeing the premiums increasing. This is particularly true for small businesses that are already being crippled by the rising costs. But homeowners are seeing huge jumps in the cost of home insurance at a time when the mortgage rates are going up and bills are skyrocketing. Taoiseach, I'm really concerned about what's happening in terms of home insurance, and I know what in terms of construction inflation and the cost of rebuilding and all that, but I'm getting cases where insurance has gone up from 400 to 500 euro to over €1,000, and it's negating all of the cost of living measures that have been implemented by the government.
Well, first of all, who's the first Deputy Batchik, isn't it? Was first, I think.
Deputy Batchik, yeah.
In terms of the Ukraine and in terms of the proposal you read about this morning, that would be more immediate than the Magnitsky Act. In fact, I discussed that with the Minister for Justice, and the view was that that act as tabled would have no real effect on the issue. But it was the Prime Minister of Estonia who first mooted the idea of confiscating Russian foreign reserves in respect of rebuilding Ukraine. And I think there's a lot of merit in that proposal, and we support that because the damage done to Ukraine by Russia is enormous in terms of economic damage, the destruction of housing, residential blocks, factories, the public realm, and buildings, and it's billions and billions and billions. So Russia needs to know that it will have to pay for a lot of the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I think it's a very important principle. Now, it's quite complex from a legal perspective, and that remains to be worked out. I will talk again to the Minister in respect of the legislation that your party has brought before the House, of Deputy Howland has in that respect. On the solidarity tax, that will include the Corrib field, and was it you raised that? Yes. Yeah, as well. And did someone say that to confirm whether I was lobbied or not? Was it?
Yes,
no, I wasn't lobbied in respect to the tax. No, not to my knowledge. I don't know whether any email came in somewhere, but certainly I wasn't lobbied in any way on that. And I would have met them some months ago, but that was in relation to their plans post the field in terms of carbon storage and that for the future, in terms of a renewable future post the extraction that's currently underway. And in terms, so that's the position of that. Deputy Boyd Barrett referenced the Fine Gael Ardèche, I think, in the proposals from, or the points made by Foreign Minister, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney. And first of all, the government has no intention of changing in terms of its current policy in respect of military neutrality. First point. There's no one galloping towards new alliances or anything like that, and you consistently make that false assertion in the House. That is not the case. I think the Minister did. The Minister referenced the triple lock more in the context of the need for reform of the United Nations, and particularly the veto that Russia has at the Security Council, which, let's be straight about it, given its outrageous attack on Ukraine, by any objective, any yardstick, it's an appalling, inhuman, immoral attack on the people of Ukraine. Yet that country that is doing that is on the Security Council. No, I don't actually equate the US to Russia.
Iraq was,
I don't
was better, was it?
That invasion was okay.
There you go again. The whataboutery through the chair is a constant. You're against the pro forma, but then you go off and you attack America. And the bottom line is you attack America far more than you do Russia, ever. The bottom line is this, that my point is, without interruption, it is not tenable that situation continues in my view. There has to be reform of the UN, and there has to be reform of the UN Security Council. Ireland, when we were on the Security Council, put forward a very good proposal linking climate change with security. Right? India were sceptical at the beginning and China was. Both of those countries abstained. One country stopped what the overwhelming majority of the UN wanted, was to link climate with security, which Ireland was championing. And all the small island states in the Pacific were very pleased with Ireland following up on its commitments that we made in the election to the Security Council. Who opposed it? Who vetoed it? Russia. Now, there are issues there, and it's just putting your head in the sand, deputies, if you don't think there's not an issue there. And I think Minister Coveney is quite right, entitled to articulate a view on that. Now, I think we still need a triple lock in terms of General Assembly and so on like that. And I have suggested we need a Citizens' Assembly to discuss these issues in a more informed way and a more deliberative way than has been the case to date. Deputy Murphy, I don't accept that COP27 has been a dismal failure. You mentioned politicians. You are a politician. You are a politician, Deputy, just like I'm a politician. You oppose carbon tax. Some would say that's a dismal failure on your part in respect of climate change. But I think a lot of politicians are very sincere about climate change, and I think a lot of progress was made. I think Minister Eamon Ryan deserves a lot of credit for extremely hard work he had to put in over the last 2 weeks. And all of the Irish team, in terms of the civil servants we have in that department, the Climate Department and Foreign Affairs, deserve a lot of credit on loss and damage, because Ireland really were leaders on loss and damage. And we've already allocated funding under the Global Shield towards loss and damage, which is one small concrete proposal around trying to prepare for that. And Ireland is committed to that area, and we remain committed. Deputy Neil Richmond raised the issue of the single market. And again, you know, I did raise issues, well, how can we expand the single market? I think there's work not yet done in respect of services, for example, in the single market. And we do need to, I think, widen the single market in respect of services, which could help in terms of insurance costs and so on in the country. And on the protocol, we didn't discuss the protocol. Generally, we did in respect of where we were. But at that time, if you remember, British politics was in a different space. But I think the Commission stands ready under Vice President Šefčovič to move on the protocol issue and to be flexible. And we want intensive talks to commence between the UK government and the European Union. Deputy Barry raised the ECJ. We didn't discuss the Apple tax case. That's now in the courts, and that remains to be resolved by the courts.
On the position.
But I'm just making the point. The question's in the context of my meeting with Vice President Vestager. I'm just making I think it's important to put on the record that we didn't discuss the Apple case. The updates are there to be had in terms of the proceedings of the court and the court's timetable. I get the update for the Deputy and can communicate that to him. Deputy Conway Walsh, I think, raised a separate issue in the motor insurance industry more generally. And you know, the motor insurance has come down, the government has implemented the vast majority of the recommendations of of the group that the government established to make recommendations on the insurance industry. Now it does fall for the industry to reduce premia in other areas of insurance. That hasn't yet been reduced.